It's a little after 1, so I guess we'll go ahead and get started in the interest of time. My name is Sharon Stroh. I am the Director of Economic Development in Ottumwa, but I also chair the Opportunity Squared region. And in partnership with Professional Developers of Iowa, we are presenting our legislative roundtable today. This is the third one that I've been in attendance of since I started in Ottumwa about 5 years ago. So we hope to be able to keep this a regular or annual type of event. Just a few housekeeping rules. Make sure your phones are on silent or vibrate, whatever that is. You don't have to turn it off, but we prefer it not ring in the middle of a presentation. We've got some special folks that have come down to us from Des Moines and Cedar Falls. I was going to say Rapid, Cedar Falls, that are going to kind of kick us off today with a little bit of information from the bigger picture of economic development and what our priorities are from a lobbying standpoint. And then after that, each of the communities that are involved in Opportunity Squared will give about 10 minutes worth of presentation on the accomplishments that they've had over the last year. That'll take up about 10 minutes apiece, and then we'll wrap up with some Q&A. So please feel free to get up and move around. It is a little warm in here. We'll try and keep the door open as long as we're not interfering with anything from outside. And so I think before we get started, though, I'll do a really quick round robin with introduce yourselves. Just name and what you represent, and we can start right here.
Representative Brink, District 80, which is Appalachia County and Roanoke County, parts of Wapello and parts of Ihaska, also Vice Chair of Economic Growth and Vice Chair of Appropriations.
Jeff Shipley, Iowa House 82, most of Jefferson County, Davis and Van Buren, also serve on the Economic Development Budget Sub.
I'm James Holscher with University of Northern Iowa's Institute for Decision Making, and today for the Professional Developers of Iowa.
Craig Patterson, I'm a multi-client lobbyist here representing the Professional Developers of Iowa.
Nikki Saboski, I'm with Fairfield Economic Development Office, and I'm the project manager there. Filling in for Josh today.
Eric Quaker, City Administrator, City of Fairfield.
Steve Parker, Haskell Supervisor.
Mary Gaskell, State Representative from Ottumwa District 81.
Deandra Grove with Mahaska County Ag and Rural Development.
Todd Ferris with Sheraton Valley Electric.
Martha Witt from Indian Hills Community College.
John Schroeder with the Davis County Development Corporation.
Tom Flaherty, Mahaska County Economic Development.
Mark Grindag, Mahaska County.
Ann Frost, I'm the Director of Oswego Chamber.
Steve Wanders, Mahaska County.
Holly Berg, Area 15 Regional Planning.
Dave Humberg, Indian Hills Community College.
David Vollmer, Senior Key Account Manager with Alliant.
Dan Tomtich, Albia Industrial Development Corporation.
Deb Calvert, Business and Community Development Manager with Mid-American Energy.
Thank you and welcome everybody. I'm going to go ahead and get it turned over then to James Holscher, who is going to present to us a brief overview. As he said, he wears a couple of hats today, but I believe he's president-elect for next year on PDI.
I am with Professional Developers of Iowa.
So we have it on good authority that he can give us the down and dirty today.
I've been given 15 minutes, and there's a warning to go off in 15 minutes. So, I just wanted to thank you for inviting us down, just to kind of kick off this afternoon with a little bit of a 50,000-foot overview of economic development, and it's a little intimidating with half the room being seasoned economic developers in the room, but this is, you folks can always jump into if you have commentary as we're moving through this. For those of you that aren't familiar, the Professional Developers of Iowa is a association of about over 300 economic developers, Chamber of Commerce execs, Main Street officials, tourism representatives, but all working under the economic development umbrella. We do professional development training and events. We have Craig as our lobbyist and advocate for us, and so each year we have a couple of different events that are really designed to elevate the training that our members are providing. I'm not going to go any more into that today, but I'd be happy to answer any questions, and the other PDI members are happy to as well. What I'd like to do is just take a few minutes and have us think, kind of get our heads in the space of thinking about economic development. And when I share this kind of presentation, what's a little bit overwhelming is all the different aspects of economic development. We kind of flippantly threw out that term, but depending on what chair you are in, it can mean so many different things. Everything from quality job retention and creation to creating wealth, sustaining wealth. That may be bringing in a new project, maybe retaining a business. It could be talking about our retirees and the transferring of wealth in the community. Tax-based enhancement, and that can be on the commercial or industrial side. It can also be on the residential side. Diverse and skilled, productive, adaptive workforce. That's a term every economic developer we talk to, workforce is a huge challenge that they're out there working, talking with their business owners and manufacturers and plant managers. The workforce issue comes up. Similarly, the attraction and retention of talent. You'll continue to hear more and more about what are we doing and how are we doing compared to the other states around us that are also in the same fight. I'll have a couple comments about that in a minute. Being innovative and looking at, are we creating high-performing existing businesses? Many of our businesses struggled through the 80s or came through the 80s when there was the economic downturn in manufacturing and agriculture, and in many cases, I'm from the Waterloo, Cedar Falls area, they had to diversify. Well, we did a good job of that, but what's happened over time in many of these manufacturers is that the innovation has kind of plateaued, and they haven't been able to continually have that R&D, research and development going on. And so it's thinking about how do we infuse innovation back into our companies. High quality of place. What's the experience like to live and be and work in our communities across Iowa? Increased utility sales. Our utility providers are huge partners in the economic development efforts. We have to think from what chair they are looking at as well. They're hoping to sell usage of their energy, and they are very proactive in helping and guiding companies as they're moving forward. And then the last thing, piece on that I just want to share is how proactive are we about the different economic development trends? All these things are going on, and when I'm facilitating meetings with economic development organizations and other groups, I hear myself saying, you know, there are 10 other meetings in other states just like this going on. And our challenge is to think, how competitive are we going to be? Because there's going to be winners and losers in this process, whether it's somebody in Minnesota, somebody in Nebraska having the exact same meeting we are, and they're thinking, hey, we need to beat Iowa, we need to beat the communities over there. And there's a lot of things to look at. So just wanted to provide that as a little food for thought.
And James,
Yeah.
I'd like to add that,
Yeah.
especially in this area, be mindful of the fact that most of these economic development groups are one-person staff. So.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. You may have seen slides like this that talks about different types of economic activity. When you talk about export or base activity, that's new money coming into areas. So if you're looking at Oskaloosa, that's, are we bringing money from outside of the region here? So new wealth coming in versus a recirculating or non-basic activity of dollars within the community. The difference is, so if you are attracting, say you're a manufacturer here and you're selling your product into other states, that's new money coming in. If you are selling, if you're selling groceries, typically your money is going to be recirculated here locally, and it's not necessarily new money coming in. It's important for us to always be thinking about that when we're talking about different economic development issues, projects, events. As economic developers, we always have to kind of look at, all right, what kind of impact is this initiative creating? Sometimes they need to be non-base activities. Sometimes it needs to be a recirculation. Hey, we need to have grocery stores, we need to have retail, we need to have events that are for us and create that quality of life. But other times we need to be thinking really strategically about how we bring new money in. So, for example, for tourism, if you were thinking about something that was just local, that would be a recirculation of dollars here. But if we start to look at it from a real strategic perspective and say, how do we get more people from farther away to bring in their money here to our community, then it's starting to be a strategic economic development initiative. Sometimes we're talking about, I'm not going to go into all these terms, but sometimes we're talking about leakage. You know, how much money is going out? What do we need? So, for example, if you have your residents going outside of the county to spend their dollars, what can we do to retain some of those dollars here, so that they spend it locally versus going to Des Moines or Iowa City or wherever to spend? And that's not just always with retail, but that kind of illustrates that concept of leakage. Similar to the first slide, there are a lot of balls in the air for those single economic developers and Chamber of Commerce directors in the community to keep in the air. When we're working with a community organization, these are the different lanes that you kind of look at to say, all right, what's going on here in the county? So I'm going to kind of breeze through these just to acknowledge what all the balls are in the air. So we've got business retention and expansion. Economic developers are scheduling meetings to go out and sit across from owners and plant managers to ask questions that identify red flags. What could cause us to close? What could cause us to lay off individuals? Or what opportunities do we have that we can take advantage of, and we need to help these businesses? It's kind of like a case management approach to the businesses that are out there. On the other side is business attraction. Now, we always say in economic development, business attraction gets the label of being the sexy thing, where it's bringing in new stuff, where you're trying, if you hear of projects, companies that are in other parts of the United States that are considering this area of Iowa to come move and bring their project here. So there's two pieces of that, the business retention and expansion, and then the attraction. We have financing. Financing could be your infrastructure that would support businesses. So if you're thinking of like an industrial park, it might be sewer, water, electricity, roads. It's putting together the financing that goes around that. We have tourism. We talked about tourism earlier. Small business development and entrepreneurship. Many communities are trying to support and foster small business growth, because we know that those kinds of businesses are often sticky, that they will stay if they're created locally, and are often generators of a lot of workers. I always like to say that the small business entrepreneurship is about one step away from business retention and expansion, because we usually, one of the first things that happen is you start to hire people, and you start to grow, and then all of a sudden you're on the list to have business retention and expansion visits. We talked about workforce and talent development, retail promotions, commercial retail development, community development and placemaking. I talked about that before. It's that quality of place, quality of life. Incentives and financial packaging. I put that on there, it kind of speaks for itself, but from an economic developer's perspective, it's how can we look at that issue proactively and think it through proactively, so if a project comes up, we don't have to start from scratch and think through what kind of policies we need in place, and is there a process in place. We've already got that, and so that if a local business is looking at expanding and needs assistance, great. If there's a company that's coming in and needs assistance, we've got those already in place. Sites and buildings, which are your industrial parks, your available buildings, and the like. So all of those are the many aspects of economic development that we're talking about today, and that you're going to hear some of our community representatives visiting about in just a minute. I talked about this, but I always like to go back to it. In economic development, we talk about business retention and expansion, and the rule of thumb is about 70 to 80% of growth comes from the existing businesses that you have. That's why those business retention and expansion visits are so important. going out and talking to them and finding out what red flags you want to keep folks here, but then also, hey, if there's an opportunity to expand, how can we help them? Sometimes a lot of people get excited about that business attraction, but really at the end of the day, it's the business retention that creates a lot. Now, we have been working with the economic developers out there doing the interviews, and it's kind of hot off the presses, you know, of the companies through the business retention and expansion business. About 46% of the companies surveyed statewide, now this is both urban and rural areas, about 46% are interested in expanding over the next 2 or 3 years. That's about $2.4 billion worth of potential growth and about 4,500 potential jobs. But similarly, about 40% of those companies are in communities and there's not room to expand. So they would expand, but there's not any room, there's nowhere to go. So kind of going back to that proactive, have we been proactive at the local level to try to create space and policies so that we can have those type of expansions? This goes back to that reality check that I talked about before. If you're not committed and playing to win, you will lose. Over the next 5 to 10 years, there are going to be communities in Iowa, communities across the Midwest that fail and some that succeed, especially when we're talking about our rural communities that are really struggling to find workers. That workforce and talent issue that you look in the newspapers and national publications, different states are being very proactive in the types of initiatives that they have to either attract workers, grow their own, or try to bring folks back into their communities. And it's kind of one of those questions. It's not, are we going to do it, but it's like, how good are we doing it? Are we actually trying to do it to beat everybody else that's out there, or are we just kind of dabbling in it? Existing businesses. I talked about the potential growth there. Land and buildings for business expansion, which I mentioned. Talking about agriculture and business innovation. Building on what we have, a tradition of agriculture excellence and innovation. How do we take that to the next level and go back to our existing businesses and kind of put a shot in the arm and say, all right, hey, we can't plateau. We need to continually be innovating if we're going to be successful. Like workforce housing is an issue that comes up in every community that we visit with. Some communities are being quite proactive, and some are not. I heard, and many of you may have already heard this kind of an example, but in south of Chicago, there's a rural community there that has been struggling to find housing, and so what they did, a private developer, is built a multi-use building. First level is their public library, and the upper level is multi-use is multifamily housing on the second level. It's a private developer leasing to the city for the library, and then that's cash flowing the overall construction, and then they're having multi-use on the second level. So it's, are we being innovative and trying to look a little outside the box on how we tackle issues like housing? Rural development is in Iowa. We have aggressive effort through the Iowa Rural Development Council and the Empower Rural Iowa initiative to address how do we help our smaller rural communities succeed. But again, it's how aggressive are we being? And unfortunately, not all will succeed, but I think we're rolling out some policy here in the near future that will help many of those folks at least have a fighting chance. And then finally, the proactive policy, which I've mentioned. It's, are we being playing catch up to our competitors? Are we trying to be at the front of the curve, being innovative, or are we somewhere in between? And it's kind of all of us in the room to make that decision as far as where are we going to be and how are we going to compete in the overall economic development fight. I'm going to call Craig Patterson up, who's our legislative advocate to visit a little bit about, from the professional developers of Iowa perspective, what are our main points for the coming year. I'll pass those out.
I think someone came in with, does anyone not
Oh,
have
good.
a?
Got him.
Thanks. Okay. So, and I appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you today. And as James kind of laid out there, PDI is a very diverse organization, and economic development is a very diverse profession from around the state, as you all know. You have some areas where you've got one person in charge of an entire region, and then you have some cities where you might have a dozen people on staff. And finding something that fits, everybody is extremely challenging. That's something that we continue to try to, dig into. Our legislative agenda comes from the grassroots up. Every year we try to ask our members what are the biggest challenges that you're facing as far as being successful in economic development in your area. And we try to basically bring all of those together and into one document. And and throughout the legislative session, things will pop up that we'll have to be flexible with and be nimble as far as being able to kind of change and give feedback on proposals that are out there. But a couple of things, economic development environment really kind of speaks to the tools that are out there that our folks use, from tax credit programs to economic development funding for the department. Really, pieces like that and having as many tools available at their disposal are critical. Sometimes we get into these conversations about tax credits that are tend to be detrimental. A lot of we'll get at the State House into these conversations where people will be bashing on tax credit programs and talking about them as if they're sort of as if they're money out of the budget, which in a lot of situations, a lot of these programs are actually they are generating projects which and then the tax credit is actually a piece of the revenue that's generated from the project. Without the program in place in the first place, the project would never happen. So, to whatever extent, and you can dig into the document a little bit more too, as far as the details on those. I just want to give a kind of a high-level conversation here. But secondly, workforce training, recruitment, and retention. That is something that I know legislators are hearing probably everywhere, every meeting you go to. The state has, I think right now our unemployment rate is either second or third in the country, and it's been the lowest in the country. So we have to get more people here, and we are advocating to legislators to look at all sorts of options. From I know last year in the Senate, for example, a freshman senator had a legislation regarding remote workers, trying to incent remote workers. That was a piece that I showed up to the subcommittee and spoke and said this is one of several pieces that we should be looking at. There's a number of different ideas as far as tuition reimbursement, specifically looking at medical profession jobs where we've got critical gaps, especially in rural Iowa in certain areas. We really need to be thinking big as far as that goes and looking at what we can do to remedy that. It's going to be hard to get a company to come into an area where you're making a case that the closest doctor's over an hour away. So we really need to have a robust conversation about that. Water quality is something that our folks have talked about with respect of whatever does move forward should have a quality of life component to it that drives workforce retention, that drives quality of life initiatives that make our communities more livable, more attractive, pieces like that. I think the legislature has discussed I will a couple times. That's a potential for going forward into the next year. Just those pieces that have to do with lake restoration, trail funding, pieces like that that help us lure young people into Iowa, get them to put down roots and stay here. Those are pieces that we'd like to make sure stay on the agenda. Just kind of moving through, I think we kind of talked about. I'm going to skip down to tax increment financing. That's something that is the single biggest local economic development tool that members have to be able to use to draw down funding from state programs. And basically for economic development, that's a number one, is trying to keep TIF from being altered in any significant negative way. Workforce housing, the legislature took the step last year in raising the cap on the rural part of the workforce housing program, and they also cleared the backlog on the rural piece. And that was a huge piece. We were, for PDI standpoint, we were really advocating that that the legislature maybe look at one-time funding to clear the backlog on both parts of the program. But we're glad that they did the rural piece. Going into next year, we do think that there's some merit in looking at clearing the backlog also from the main part of the program, which is for the bigger communities. But anything that we can do to try to drive workforce housing, different ideas out there, we're open to. Last year, also, the legislature and the governor worked to put together a program at the Newton prison that's modeled after the Dakotas regarding prison housing, where the prisoners are going to be getting those skills, which leads to less recidivism among when they get out. But that's a great proposal. But at the same time, it's just in Newton right now, starting up. And I know I was in a legislative meeting in Harrison County last week, which is on the far west part of the state, and the housing person from that area was talking about how great that program is. But at the same time, like for Harrison County, there's $36,000 worth of travel of cost in getting any of those houses to that area. So that's added on top of their costs. So just things to think about. The more that we can get projects like that up and running and expanded, the better. Brownfield, Grayfield, some of the tax credit programs that are so critical. Increased opportunities for immigrants, and we kind of touch on legal immigration here. Really, that's a federal issue, but we really urge the federal government to get their hands dirty and really get into that, try to get that solved, because there's a lot of gaps that we have, especially on the tourism angle. During the summer season, I know there's a lot of water parks, like when I was in Okoboji last week as well, talking with some folks up there, and they rely on some of those visas, those temporary visas to get people in there to staff those hotels and those parks. And enhance Iowa school funding, alternative project delivery. We talked a little bit about that in here as well, and broadband expansion. But basically, we will be throughout the session working with legislators and trying to be that connection between the legislators and those of you at home. So I invite you to keep up to speed on what we're putting out. Every 2 weeks we'll put out our policy perspectives email that kind of says a rundown of what's going on in the legislature. We bill track. We've got a bill tracker on our website that also gets pasted into that document, and then we also do calls every 2 weeks for throughout the session on Monday mornings that to brief legislator or to brief PDI members on what's happening at the State House. But with that, I'll just hand it over. I'm here as a resource. I'm not going anywhere. So if anyone has any questions, we have questions at the
This
end.
isn't the stump the bands section for Greg. I have questions, but he will stick around, and we're, from a PDI's perspective, we're happy to answer questions throughout. The balance of the afternoon is going to be hearing from your area economic developers as far as what's going on. The thing I'll leave you with is, at the University of Northern Iowa, we are involved with a lot of professional development for economic developers, and we represent an organization that works with 6 different states: South Dakota, Iowa, Nebraska, Missouri, Oklahoma, I got all Kansas. And Iowa's developers, the name kind of says it all. From a professional standpoint, we have a committed, very hardworking group of economic developers on there. The question is, are we equipping them to compete with those other states? The other states are equally as aggressive when it comes to economic development. And so the question I always ask the groups I work with, are we looking from a perspective of, are we trying to maximize our potential? You know, just competing or having our hat in the ring is one thing, but are we maximizing our potential? And I think that's what Professional Developers of Iowa is all about. As I said, I'll be happy to answer any questions, but I think this would be important now to kind of turn it over to local developers to hear what's really going on down here. So I'm not sure who's up first.
David, we're gonna switch the PowerPoint just a little bit, and David's gonna kick us off from Indian Hills.
Just kind of set the mood there, you know, just a flashback to keep it
I'm just gonna leave these handouts here that I can grab them if they want. Then I go over there and hit page down, is that what I do?
How about?
All right, my name is Dave Humberg, and I'm the business liaison here at Indian Hills Community College. I want to welcome all of you here, and Indian Hills Community College, most of you are already aware of this, but we serve 10 counties here in east, south central Iowa, Van Buren County, Davis County, Appaloosa County, Wayne County, Monroe County, Wapello County, Keokuk County, Jefferson County, and Mahaska County. Those are the 10 counties that we serve. So, but what I wanted to do just here is to talk a little bit about the 260E, which is Iowa New Jobs Training funds that are available, and then also the 260F, which is Iowa Jobs Training funds that are available to manufacturers, assemblers, warehousing, wholesale, biotechnology, renewable energy, information technology, and research and development, and also those companies that are providing interstate commerce. So those are all companies that are available. The 260E, and I have handouts here. Not actually, you come pick them up if you like. So grab them as you leave or as you need the information. I would like to have that information. The 260E is the goal of the 260E Iowa New Jobs Training Program is to support growing Iowa employers and strengthening the Iowa workforce. The 260E Iowa New Jobs reimburses participating Iowa employers for the costs of training and upskilling those new workers that they've hired. So it's new positions to fill newly created positions. These are new positions above the employment base. So it's added new positions for that employer. And it's that money is generated through a bond sale that is facilitated through the college. In fact, Indian Hills just had a recent bond sale earlier this month, which we had 4 companies participate. I'm going to talk about those companies and some of the dollars and some of the new jobs that will be trained, those new positions that will be trained with those training dollars that are available. And The way that those bonds are retired then is through the Iowa withholding income tax. Those dollars are then diverted to Indian Hills, and Indian Hills then in turn retires those 260E bonds. So the trainings are paid for, the companies, there's really no out-of-pocket for the dollars for the companies, and they've got an adequately trained, superior trained workforce. So, and those bonds are generally retired within 10 years. Many cases, they're retired within 7 or 8 years because as the employees, those new jobs, as their income increases, then so do the taxes that are withheld, the Iowa taxes that are withheld. So some of those companies that have benefited from the 260E projects, in our recent December 2019, it was a $2.1 million bond issuance, 235 new jobs, new positions will be trained with those monies. East Penn, which is a family-owned business, headquartered out of Pennsylvania. They've got a facility, manufacturing facility already in Corydon, and they have expanded 92 new positions. In phase 1, once all of the phases, expansion phases are concluded, they'll have increased 225 new jobs. So Relco Locomotives, which is located in Albia, they have 12 new jobs being trained there, and have increased their base, 12 new jobs. And Relco Locomotives is a long-established company that in the locomotive leasing, rebuilding, and repairing industry there in Albia. Hy-Vee Distribution Center in Sheridan is an employee-owned company, and there were $820,000 in job dollars that is available to them to train 105 new positions. And AWOL Outdoors, also known as Camp 365 out of Albia, has 25 new jobs. They have projected 75 jobs total, but phase 1 is 25 new jobs. And they are a privately owned company that is relocating from or expanding from Minnesota into Iowa. So just to kind of break things down, Indian Hills has had 4 260E Iowa New Jobs training projects, bond sales in August of 16 and 17, 2018, and then this most recent one this month in 2019. A total of 654 new jobs coming to Iowa and through 14 companies, and $5.9 million in training funds to make sure that those positions are adequately trained. 7 of those 14 new companies are privately or employee-owned companies. 3 of those 14 companies, 260E companies, are family-owned companies. CNC Manufacturing started as CNC Machining in Centerville, started in their grandfather's barn, I believe, or their father's barn. Yeah, so I mean, it's a family-owned business that now has a manufacturing facility in Centerville and one in Ottumwa. So the dollars are going to small and Iowa-based companies. So 171 of those 654 jobs were new jobs relocated to Iowa from Pennsylvania, Michigan, Illinois, California, and Ireland. So, all right. The next thing that project that program that I'd like to talk about is the 260F. And the 260F is also through the Iowa Economic Development. And there we go. All right. And the F provides forgivable loans to these businesses and will reimburse those businesses. Thank you, Sharon. I see that hand. All right. Reimburse those businesses up to 70% of the cost of the training. The 260F dollars or those forgivable loans are limited to $25,000 a year or $50,000 over 3 years. So, the employers pay 30% matching funds for every training program. And some of the companies that are benefiting from the 260F is, find it here. Here we go. Mid-States Manufacturing down in Van Buren County, Nelson Company in Jefferson County, Cunningham here in Mahaska, Lion Energy, the power plant in Wapello County, Christner Contracting, JBS Live Pork, at both locations, the milling location up in Hedrick area, and also the live pork in Ottumwa. Oskaloosa Foods right here in Oskaloosa, Iowa Aluminum, Dairy Concepts, Shivers Manufacturing up in Corden, Ginomoto over in the Eddyville Complex, Hill Phoenix in Centerville, and also over in Van Buren County, Keosauqua. M3, which is another family startup business located in Bloomfield, Davis County, and Traffic's Devices in Fairfield, JBS Live Pork, I already mentioned them, and Ideal Energy, and DeYoung Manufacturing. DeYoung Manufacturing right up here in New Sharon has a 260F project for the very first time. And they are a family upstarted company. 2 minutes, thank you. All right, so if we've benefited 26 companies with the 260F over the recent years, 2016 through 2019. 472 workers have been impacted through the 260F and companies. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those questions, or in fact I'll be hanging around here after following the event. So, okay, thank you. And who do I turn this over to? Dan Tomtich. The up and down button.
Okay.
Yep, down advances.
Okay. I'm Dan Tomtich. I'm the Economic Development Director for Albia in Monroe County. I'm a one-person office. I am lucky enough to have a volunteer who comes in and helps me out with work and helping run a couple of the nonprofits that we operate out of our office. But primarily, I'm the only paid person here. I'll just go ahead and get started. Dave's mentioned a couple of these projects in his speech, but I'm I'm just gonna briefly go over about 3 projects that we've been working on the past year. Roco Locomotives, located in Alvia in around 2005. They've got 150 employees now. This most recent expansion had 12 jobs, $1.4 million in investments. Another small picture, you guys are a ways away, but the building out here in the front, you see new wood structure out here. This expansion was to build a new paint booth for the locomotives. It's long and skinny, they can fit three locomotives in there. Their existing paint booth sits in the back and could only hold 1, so this expansion, they found out that the paint booth part of painting the locomotives was really bottlenecking their operations, so this is really going to help get locomotives out the door quicker for them. Some of the project, or some of the things we use to help with this project, we use the state's IEDA's High Quality Job Program. As Dave mentioned, we use the 260F and also tax abatement. And then recently, Roco has also expanded into a facility in Cedar Rapids that became available. So they're a growing company, and I think they can access some other railroads up there. But they do a lot of work for the BNS and the UP, and among others. And they also do a lot of custom, build different custom locomotives. And yeah, that's basically it for them. Dave also mentioned Camp 365. This is a new company that Todd and I worked a lot on over the past year or so. They officially announced in January $3.5 million new plant location. They committed to the state for 166 jobs in the next few years. They also have used the 260 program as Dave mentioned, the state high quality jobs program played a part. Tax abatement. We use some different revolving loan funds from between RECs and Area 15 regional planning down at Tumwa. This is a new product. They've been building, doing some research and development up in Minneapolis for several years, but it's the world's first fold-out camper. It can go. It's the cabin that goes anywhere. Is their motto. But the deal on the camper on the left is all folded up. How it would hook up to the back of your car. This thing is really flexible. You can attach. Have different attachments on the outside of it to haul your wakeboards or kayaks, bicycles, whatever you want to recreational wise. But it's really, they've got a lot of patents and a lot of new inventions in this product. And the really neat thing is that the wheelbase is adjustable on it, so they can drop that wheelbase down to a 4-foot wide path and pull it behind a UTV side-by-side four-wheeler and really take it anywhere. They put skis on it, taking it out on frozen lakes to use for ice fishing. There's an attachment to go over the front door, and you can sit right outside there and fish through the ice. And they really come up with a lot of neat ideas for it. But they're in the process. They went into an existing building in Alvia for now until they build a new building, hopefully next spring. They currently have 12 employees or so. This has kind of been an exciting project. Todd and I, we worked on this quite a bit, and he certainly helped out with some of the rolling loan funds and programs he has access to at the REC. Cargill, back in September, announced a $128.3 million expansion. Not a lot of jobs with this one, but it's a really important expansion because it's going to do some things. Going to provide some office space for them. They're going to upgrade their wastewater treatment program or wastewater treatment plant, and also do some work on research and development. I think this isn't really a flashy project, but it's really going to upgrade some things and open the door for more over-the-fence type customers in the future. Cargill is the main hub in the center there, but then you have over-the-fence companies like the German company Walker, which makes cyclodextrins, You got two different Japanese-owned companies, Ajinomoto. One makes MSG and food blending for people, and the other one makes amino acids for poultry, hogs, and cattle. So there's really a lot of different products being produced out of that complex, and it's really a huge economic driver for the whole region, not just for Monroe County. Some of the programs they utilized was basically the high quality jobs program and local tax abatement. That's really all I have on that one. You can see we do have room for expansion over here in this area. We've got the newer Eddyville chlor-alkali plant right there, but all this area in the on the western side of the complex is ready for expansion. Mid-American's got a new substation there, and this is kind of a unique deal where it's served by both Mid-American and Alliant for electricity. And like I said, that's basically it for them. We're supposed to cut this to only 3 slides, but really, this is the busiest time I've ever seen it since I've been doing this job. And we've been working with, Todd and I have both been working with Superior Machine, a CNC type manufacturer in Albia. They've just recently expanded as well. And then Zero Connect is a cable manufacturer in Albia, computer cables and data cables. And they just recently went through that expansion this past year too. So anyway, that's where I'll cut it off there. And unless anybody has any questions, I'll turn it over to Deanne.
All right, I am Deanne DeGroat with Mahaska County Ag and Rural Development. We also have our supervisors here, Tom Perry with the county and Ann Frost, our chamber director. I wanted to focus on just a few slides of the financing piece with economic development. So the first one is our local program, and that is our revolving loan fund. We have several businesses that utilize this program. Our goal is to get 1 to 2 businesses to use this every year if the funds are available, of course. Our range of funding has been from $30,000 to $150,000 for the program. Most recently, Gilman Manufacturing east of town, they have ag equipment and truck lifts. They received a loan to expand their paint booth line, so equipment expansion, change in ownership, real estate is what the revolving loan fund can be used for. So we've had good success in the past. Have a couple coming down the pipe that might utilize this fund as well, but a great local program, and then also the statewide program. So wanted to just showcase to our legislators how important the Future Ready Iowa Innovation Grant has been, not only for Mahaska County, but our region in general. I know 2 rounds have currently gone out for the Future Ready Iowa program, about $1 million. We have received 3 grants in the last 2 rounds. So our county hospital has received 2 of them for lab technicians, paramedic training, therapy, and then our showcased here is Tiffany Tremmel, who was a supporter of the program through our high school. And that is getting the high school students down to Indian Hills so they can get these credits, get them trained so that they can come back and work. And so it's been a great program here. I know Central College have received funds. Indian Hills has used this program, and I might be missing a few in our region as well, but definitely a great program from the state level for our community. Any other questions? Carl?
How's your default rate on your revolving loan fund? Have you ever had any problems collecting, or have they usually been paid?
Just one.
Just one?
In the time I've been here.
Okay.
And it did get paid. I mean,
Eventually?
it was, yes, it was behind, but it did get paid off.
Wonderful. Good for you.
Well, hello everyone. Sorry I missed introductions. I'm Carla Ising with the Marion County Development Commission. I had forgot the PDI policy handbook in my car, the brochures that they had given me, so I had to go run down and get those. We are the Pella Knoxville area. A couple things that I wanted to point out that have been key in our area was Back in 1915, 16, we did a housing study. And that has been a critical study. I know sometimes when people come and ask for money for studies, people poo-poo those. But that study has really yielded several housing developments, not only in Pella, but also in Pleasantville and in the helping with the VA campus. I will let you know as legislators, there's going to be hopefully a big announcement in January. I have been in this position for 25 years. We have been working for 25 years to get the VA campus into private ownership from the federal government. The VA does not have a similar process like military bases do, so it has been a cumbersome process. Thanks to Director Durham, she has really helped us negotiate not only the federal GSA agency, but the state SHPO agency, and I believe you'll be hearing a great announcement coming out in January. The other thing that I wanted to point out that I think is really important as we talk about housing, we talk about existing industry expansion and quality of life. One of the things that we have to realize that I thought this statistic was really important. Over the last 5 years, just in our county of 33,000 people, we've had net new manufacturing jobs grow by 12.4%. That's nearly 800 manufacturing jobs in 5 years have been added. Not existing ones, but new ones. Our population, on the other hand, has grown by 1.3%. And overall, all jobs, if you look at all sectors, they grew by 6.5%. We now in Marion County, a county again of about 33,000 people, have well over 7,000 manufacturing jobs. So finding the people to fill those jobs are critical, whether it be what we're doing in housing, what we're doing, as I would share in my next slide with recruitment, and as far as infrastructure, all the different things that are going on in our communities to make our communities helpful to get around, to do business, as well as the quality of life. And the one ask I would say that I think is critical, a new program was just revealed over the last couple of months to do a cooperative program with IEDA to do workforce recruitment. That program sold out, the cooperative with the state putting some money and all of us local communities putting up money pretty much instantly. And we, I think, in the future are going to need to invest more money into that type of cooperative marketing to get people here. Because as you're hearing these stories, you're hearing people talk about new jobs, new jobs, new jobs. Well, it goes hand in hand with quality of life. It goes hand in hand with infrastructure and housing and childcare, which is the other program that we just completed. So that would be my ask. And next is John.
Are you having trouble with your arm,
Did I take
Sharon?
10 minutes?
Yeah. Huh? I thought you keep putting your arm up in the air. I thought you were having some problems.
Just to let you know, it's almost time.
Well, you is the down arrow in the middle here, is that where I go to move it?
Yes. Down, just use the down.
Ah, worked, all right. My name is John Schroeder, I'm from Davis County. I'm not really a professional economic developer, I'm an old car dealer that sold out 3 or 4 years before he wanted to because I found a guy with the cash. All right? I got into this because my wife wanted to get me out of the house, and I'm kind of part-time paid, part-time community volunteer. So this is kind of where I come from. This is a picture of our spec building. It was there when I took this job almost 10, 11 years ago. It took us 7 years to sell the building. The project would have been deemed too risky if it hadn't been for the spec shell building tax exemption, which the state allowed us, so we did not pay taxes on it until we were able to do something with it. Several years ago, a company called Civics bought it. They were only using, Physics bought it. They were only using about half the building. However, in the last year, they have finished off the back half of the building and added office space because they've run into a partnership with a German company. The expansion will house a mobility apparatus warehouse, basically wheelchairs, warehouse and distribution center, and add 12 to 15 jobs to our community. In addition, there's a plan and process to move a company from California to the location. This $3 million project.
Sorry, I did that. Didn't mean to. The light show's free.
It will require an expansion anywhere to $3 million of the existing building and at least offer at least another dozen jobs. Okay, so what are the programs? First of all, we use the USDA program to build a building in the first place, and when the building gets paid off, the money comes back and it goes into a revolving loan fund with Southern Iowa Electric Company, which basically got the thing started. We did not use any TIF here because the primary owner of this company was in the legislature at the time and didn't consider that to be an ethical situation, but we're definitely going to use it when we do the $3 million expansion in the near future. The company is in the process of signing up for the Indian Hills College 260E and 260F programs, so that'll be another part of it. Okay? The next company is the next one is a locally owned company. When this company was first built, it was right to here. Now that was 4 years ago. They have since added this and this. It's locally owned. A couple young guys, 2 brothers, and graduates of Iowa State University, and a retired father, who's a local person who made his foundation, basically made his fortune in Colorado, pouring foundations for all the housing that they're doing out there. This is an interesting story. I get a call at 4 o'clock in the afternoon from a county supervisor. Phil is talking about putting up a new plant for his boys, and he's going to do it in a city away from here. You got to get out and see him. I said, I'll go out first thing Monday morning. I hung up the phone. I said, whoops, I think I better go out today. I go out there and he's not there. I go out there Monday, he's not there. I go out there on Wednesday and he's in Colorado pouring foundations. Talk to his wife. 6:30 Friday morning, I get a call from Phil. 6:30 in the morning, I'm home. You want to talk to me? I go out to the house. We sit at the table for 3 hours. We talk about the Broncos. He's a season ticket holder, and I used to live out there and still have some too. We talk about these other things. First thing that happens, I go obviously over all the economic stuff, you know, lower utilities, better place to be, cheaper workforce, blah, 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 all my stuff. I'm getting nowhere. I get ready to leave, and I look at him. Phil's 20 years younger and 10 years richer than I am, or 10 times richer than I am. I look at him and I said, Phil, I think when you get to be my age, you'll feel better about your project if you do it here in Davis County where you raised your kids and you live. And I sold cards, remember? All right? I could see it in his face. All right, and I hoped I had time to do that. Anyway, then the mayor got excited and met him on the street one day and gave him 5 acres in our industrial park for $100, which he didn't have to do, and which he found out later when he tried to transfer the property really belonged to the development corporation and he couldn't sell it to him in the first place. We let him sweat for 2 weeks, all right? And then we went ahead and signed everything over to him. So we did not do a TIF on that one either because we'd already given him the money. They've had 3 expansions in 5 years. Super modern plant visited by Governors Branstad and Reynolds. State-of-the-art manufacturing equipment and machines, some being replaced already even though they're only 4 or 5 years old. Not only from America but also from Japan, the Netherlands, and Germany. So M3 is very aware of Iowa's tax laws, including but not limited to the 50% deductibility of federal taxes, no personal property tax on corporate inventories of goods in process, raw materials or saleable goods, no property tax on industrial machinery, equipment or computers, no sales tax on materials used in the manufacturing process and purchases of electricity or natural gas used directly in the manufacturing process, and that Iowa is one of the few states that offers a refundable research activities credit. So why do I list all this stuff? Because after I kind of got him looking our way, he told me it was between us and Kirksville, Missouri, which is right down the road. So for any of you who don't think these things are important, all right, remember, Kirksville, Missouri was a prime contender and was just down the road. These things basically helped him make a decision to come to Bloomfield, all right? In addition, M3 has also used the 260F program from Indian Hills for training for its people. How am I doing, Sharon?
You're fine, you got 5 more.
I need 4.5, all right? True value. This is an immigrant from Wisconsin who came to Davis County in search of Iowa deer. His story basically is he liked our community and he wanted to move down here. But he didn't know where to find. We found him some property, got him involved with some people, and basically the True Value store is open 7 days a week and always some hours on holidays. Jeremy and Christina have built a solid retail business, a financial asset to our small rural community, and a valuable resource to the builders, contractors, and citizens of Bloomfield. They have added a new home to our property tax rolls, are good business people and good citizens to have in our community. In addition, they have opened a second store in Albia. Please note, we did not charge Albia finder's fee to get them over there. Bloomfield True Value has benefited from a TIF agreement between it and the city of Bloomfield is dependent obviously on the specific number of jobs that they'll use. So this has been a little bit different kind of thing, but it's important for us. We lost our 2 records 4 or 5 years ago. So we would have to go to Ottumwa or somewhere out of the community, and they run a really good business, been a big help to us, and TIF was the deal. So I've got several quick final thoughts. First, while it's true that most often the projects that need the least input from outside turn out to be the best ones, it is also true that most often there needs to be a catalyst to get the project off dead center. It is my job to provide the catalyst, to be the catalyst, to use the advantages of living and doing business in Iowa, make the project a reality, to get the project moving and keep it moving. Second, except for gifting from our mayor, TIF is the only locally controlled asset that we have to work with. Okay, everything else either comes from the state or the federal government or down through the processes somewhere. And for a smaller community like Bloomfield, they try to help us as much as they can from the other agencies and organizations, but basically it becomes a little bit of a problem because, first of all, they got to look at the assets, they have to commit to the size of the projects that we have, and there's complications in the process, and those different things make it just difficult for us to stay. TIF is more sensible. It's local, it's accessible, it's credible, it is easily understood by the recipient, and frankly, for smaller businesses, once the TIF agreement's done, they don't have a whole lot of paperwork or a lot of things they got to do. All they have to do is adhere to the agreement that they provided when they signed the TIF agreement in the first place. So for a small business person who maybe doesn't have a whole lot of assets and stuff, for those kinds of things, it's a simple program, it's easy to facilitate, and like I say, it's very understandable for them. They know what they're getting. The final thing I guess I would tell you is, it's been my experience that the help we are able to give is not so much a make or break concession as it is a recognition. When our local investors, business owners, and entrepreneurs hear and read about the big deals made in the larger metropolitan areas of our state, TIF, 260E&F, and the other tax and promotional programs that we can offer to them are, as often as not, more important from an empathetic point of view as they are a financial one. And then, in other words, it's just a recognition that, yes, you count too, and what you hear, you're part of the business. In our smaller communities, I think this is just a real critical thing. Anyway, because of the tools that you have provided for us, we have basically tripled the assessed property values in our industrial park in the last 10 years, and thank you very much.
Set it down there. Ta-da, that is, I'm up next. Yay. Shameless plug for PDI here. For some of you that may not know this, Ottumwa is going to be hosting the PDI Fall Conference next September 23rd through 25th in Ottumwa, Iowa. So about 250 to 300 professional developers from all over the state are going to be hosted by yours truly. Looking forward to that. I really want to talk about the fact that we use a lot of grant programs in Ottumwa, and this is one of the projects that came to fruition because of applying for grant dollars, whether they're federally funded, whether they come through the state, or whether they are private resources. We look for those specifically so that we can do the kinds of projects that we need without adding to the burden of our administrative costs. This is Helgerson Flats. It is a site-certified, state-certified site that is available for development. For those of you that don't know what certified site is, it means that we have reduced all of the risk on the property to the developer. So this is about as shovel-ready as you're going to get. It's gone through all of the analysis of agriculture, archaeological, wetlands, endangered species, pick one. We applied for and received a grant from the John Deere Foundation, who operates in Ottumwa, for about $122,000, and this is what we certified. The outline area here is the entire property that was certified. Within the first 3 months, we sold 7.5 acres to Alliant Energy. They're going to put a new substation on that particular piece of property. I think groundbreaking is expected in 2021. We are selling it at its appraised value of $12,700 an acre, and so that was about a $95,000 return on the investment for us once we got this certified. That'll stay certified for 5 years before we have to re-engage. This is a drawing of the substation. If anybody's interested, this is the mechanic's drawings, engineer's drawing. The other piece I want to talk about, and this was just awarded recently, we received $80,000 from the Iowa Department of Transportation to pursue a feasibility study on the opportunity to move a transload station, also known as a spur. I'm sure it has many other names for it. But I want to try and diagram this for you a little bit if you can see. This green spot here is a $6 million streetscape that Ottumwa is undertaking right now. We are doing water sewer separation, new gas lines, new electric lines, all kinds of other aesthetic pieces to the project. This yellow outline here is where the current spur is. Between the construction that's going on here, the new quiet zones that were effective November 4th that have created barriers so that the rail lines don't have to blow their whistles coming through town all the time, and some general construction and other business, it's really clogging their ability to be very customer reactive. And so we thought to ourselves, oh, and on top of all of that, once you finish this, why in the world do you want 46,000 pounds of tractor trailer rig going through your downtown? Your roads aren't rated for that kind of weight. So our anticipation is that we are going to find a piece of property over here where this teal area is, that's closer to the Iowa Avenue, which is an industrial road and was rebuilt about 3 years ago. So if we can figure out how to move this over to this area somewhere, it'll give it direct access to take Highway 34 Main Street directly east, and then be able to hook up with 34 or 63 going northeast, south, or west. OEDC provided the $20,000 match. Here's another one. This has a lot to do with going back to Helgerson Flats. There's only one ingress-egress to Helgerson Flats. And right now it's a bit of a cluster when you're trying to get in off when you're southbound on 149. However, DOT is not going to be able to do anything for us on that particular intersection because it doesn't have any of the warrants that are necessary for them to reconfigure. However, if we want to make traffic smoother, we can look at redistributing the traffic once you get inside the industrial park. Used to have a stop sign here, used to have a stop sign here. So as the trucks are coming in, they have to stop. In order for them to turn, they have to make a wide turn. If there's somebody coming out and they're at the stop sign, there's nowhere for them to go. So our plan right now, and we were able to get some funding for this particular, again, that was looped into the site certification. We are able to negotiate with the National Guard, state of Iowa, to be able to purchase a piece of land in this quadrangle so that we can move the curbing back and then remove the stop signs, give this particular property to the north a stop sign, and then these can move freely. Greater maneuverability, greater safety, a lot more access. It's the cheapest and most effective way that we can do this without having to mess around with DOT. The one thing that I can tell you though is because it's a National Guard property, it does have to be authorized by the governor. So it has to go all the way on up for them to sell state property. This is 0.034 acres. It'll cost us about $534. It's not even a big expense, but it does happen to be the one thing that's going to allow this to run much, much smoother. And that helps a lot when we're looking at recruiting new businesses that might have additional tractors for that. I am done with my physical presentation other than to let you know that in 2020 USDA is going to have grants that are available so that we can continue with this project with the construction side of it. Again, lowers the city's portion of the investment once the property becomes theirs. OEDC is going to buy it, but it's going to be for the city. We don't want to do construction on easement properties. So, Just wanted to let you know very briefly that many of my colleagues that are sitting in this room and I are working on a talent attraction plan. It's designed to be complementary to the state marketing talent attraction plan. And there should, the marketing side of it, or the planning side of it, is scheduled to be complete in February of 2020. From there, we will take steps to actually implement the plan so that we can use the same kinds of tools that the state is using to move us from tourism to residency with folks that we're looking at to come into Iowa from outside of our area. So we'll be really trying to boost the sense of community that Southeast Iowa can provide. Other than that, I think that I am finished, and I think the last one is going to be Fairfield. Nikki, I think you're up. And I will say that's not the last one. After Fairfield, David's going to talk about avenues.
Thank you, everyone. I'm Nikki Sabotsky. I am the project coordinator at Fairfield Economic Development. I'm filling in for Josh today. He happens to be in Washington, D.C. with Donica Trump, discussing one of the initiatives that I'll be talking to you today about, which is going to be daycare. So we'll get started. I just got this presentation last night, and if you know Josh, he's a talker, so I'm going to be doing a lot of reading, and I think everything's going to be up on the screen. Down, right? All right, so our office touches many projects on a daily basis. Today I'm going to highlight 3 of those projects, which are going to be workforce housing, new industrial park and speculative shell building, solving our child care shortage, and industrial scale renewable energy shortage. Our local economy is strong. The need for additional workforce housing has been relayed to our office over and over again. So that's going to be my first point to talk about. So 2015 to 2019, we had 71 new workforce and market rate units added, $10 million in new valuation, and another 44 units under construction. April 2020 completion, and I'll show you a picture of that in just a second. Key tools for this successful project are going to be the workforce housing tax credits and the tax increment financing. And one thing about this, if you'll notice, the investors on this, we've got Berkshire Hathaway and Apple Computers, which is pretty exciting for us in Fairfield. Next thing I'm going to talk to you about is our new industrial park and speculative shell building, which was designed to position our city and county for further growth and strong partnerships. 60 acres, new industrial park, 30,000 square foot, speculative shell building, for sale right now. You guys want to talk to me? Key tools for this successful project, again, are going to be our tax increment financing and speculative shell building tax exemption. This is a picture of our new shell building. We just recently had a ribbon cutting last month. Third is going to be our Fairfield and Jefferson County Economic Development Progress Community Solutions, addressing our shortage in daycare. So our main focus with this was to address accessibility, quality, and affordability. 539 child care spaces were short in Jefferson County, which we discovered when we did our study. So that's imperative for us to shift attention to a workforce development solutions. We came up with a 22-person child care steering committee, which Josh and I both sit in on. The strategic plan of that committee was to support expansions of child care centers, support development of home providers, and to add child care centers led by our business community. We came up with a board of directors, which is now we're going to start fundraising this month. So we are fully prepared to do that. We, in addition to this, our new building will be, let me get Josh's notes here. It will be 14,000 square feet, and it will service 185 children. So, to start to addressing our childcare shortage. And my last point is going to be the industrial scale renewable energy shortage. So we have 2 projects going on in Fairfield that were not only the first in the state, but they were actually the first in the Midwest as well. Agri-Industrial Plastics Company put up a 517 kilowatt lithium ion Tesla power pack, and Maharishi University put up a 1.1 milliwatt Van Diem flow battery storage. Ideal Energy Solar, both in Fairfield, did all the design and install of that. FIDA received a $200,000 research grant from IEDA to evaluate not only the return on investment, but operations and maintenance considerations, battery performance, and effectiveness of the solar tracking for that. And this is a picture from the Agra ribbon cutting with Josh and Lori. And I think that's it. So let's see what else he's got here. Let me make sure he doesn't have any other notes for me. Back to the childcare shortage. So Josh wanted to let you guys know that one thing that we could use support from you on as elected officials and the state of Iowa is supporting legislation that would provide property tax exemption for nonprofit child care centers. This bill's not yet drafted, but Josh would be happy to talk to you guys about it when he gets back from DC. All right, I think that's all I have. Thank you.
One last, so I gotta hurry so you can be done. So, I'm the Economic Development Director, Sarah Lynn, now moved, and she's with Indian Hills Community College. So I'm giving the update for Appaloosa County. You know, they've had no activity for almost over 30 years. In the last 2 years, they've just been swamped with activity. CNC manufacturing expanded, raw material work, Iowa Heating and Cooling have all expanded into their industrial park in the last year with what's going on down there for them. And their RMA armament group is expanding and getting busier, so exciting things. And exciting things right now for Centerville. I've been working with them, facilitating discussions as they try to merge their 3 organizations, Chamber, Main Street, and Economic Development together. I would also mention that in Sheraton, Seats Inc. is an exciting project, Wisconsin company that makes seats for semis, golf carts, any kind of seat you can think of for a moving vehicle that's not in a car or truck. That's what they're going to be manufacturing in Sheraton. So we'll see that going on. To kind of put a bow around this, we talked a little bit more about the 46% the companies looking to expand. 842 companies right now in Iowa would hire 5,000 people if they could today. Okay, we talk about most of those being family, premier, you know, local companies, Farracast now that's local, things like that. Those are local companies. That window, which we've seen, what, in the last 5 years, that numbers went down every year, right, Deb?
Unavailability.
Yep, and it's the lowest we've ever seen in 5 years.
Correct.
That window is only open so long before even the families that love this community are going to say, we're done, we're out, we're tapping out, we got to go somewhere else. Even our risk management. You know, Vermeer didn't have to add another 400,000 square foot facility in Pella, but they promised Grandpa that. Now, when that next generation moves, we don't know that that will happen. So that window is closing on when we can make changes and do things around here. As you heard, we're scrapping and scratching for every bit of money we can find to help those groups. If there's anything you can do as you go through the legislation to help us, we'd greatly appreciate it. So we'll open it up for questions if anybody has any.
Or just observations from any of the thoughts?
Mary, do you want to go first or anything?
I'm thinking.
Oh, I can go on for quite a, I mean.
Go.
Okay, so I'll talk about here. I'm going to go over some stuff. Can you get to that slide really quick? I'm going to spend like just 2 minutes, the one that had the listing of all your priorities. I'm Vice Chair of Economic Development for the state, and I've been working tremendously on a lot of different issues. Child care is huge. I'm actually on the task force for that for our state. So I have a lot of different things, not only just that, but this is my slideshow for our next verbal caucus, what I'll be covering. So we are working heavily on that. Also, I tell people to look into your nursing homes. There's a lot of actual mental health issues, along with cost effectiveness of utilizing nursing homes for child care areas and sharing kitchens. and some different stuff like that. There's one facility in Iowa already doing that, and it's amazing. And they've also passed stuff in Washington and other areas. The economic development, the environment, that workforce, we know that is huge. A few things that I'm doing is I've met with the University of Iowa and the regents there, encouraging them that, they get a ton of tax dollars, yet you're pushing for individuals to leave our state. So we're basically funding other states. I have a problem with that, so they are going to be doing free job fairs this next year for Iowa's companies, trying to encourage individuals to stay here. We all know in every dollar you spend in your community, you produce $1.7 in your community. So if we're spending money on their students and sending them somewhere else, all we're doing is growing other states. And small communities, they can't pay the upwards of $2,000 for a job fair. It's not okay. So we're working on that. That should happen. Also, for recruitment and retention, I was in Chicago dealing with 12 states, and Mary, I think you're there, but then also 4 different provinces. Canada has some great opportunities, what they're doing for recruitment, which is great. One of my other Republican colleagues just flew to Puerto Rico, and we are working on some situations there because it doesn't involve immigration. They are already citizens, and they have very low poverty, and so we're working on some legislation to actually bring them here. Quality of life is so much better here than where they're at, so it's a different opportunity. But I also went to Iowa Falls, where I met Cargill's Iowa Select Farms, who actually told me their #1 crisis of their business is childcare. They're holding spots for 5 years out. They don't even know if any employees are going to have babies, but they're holding them because that's the best opportunity they have. And they can't open other facilities because of that yet. But Cargill, there's like 35 different individuals, along with the speaker, me, Debbie Durham and stuff, and so we worked through a lot of different situations there. Workforce housing, we obviously, did what you said, but we also are working on a little bit more also. The Newton situation is only projected to build 50 homes a year. We do need to expand on that, so we have to wait a little bit for that. But also, I know kind of in the southern Iowa area, there's an individual out of Pella that I've been meeting with as well that talks, and he has a really interesting format of an 8-plex for more assisted living elderly type way, which would then free up more homes and family homes for them, but it's like an 8-plex, so it's a very small grouping. So I've been meeting with him. Immigration enhanced school funding. Obviously, we know that's a top priority, otherwise we wouldn't spend 56% of our state budget on that. So for those of you guys who don't know and say we need more money, every dollar you send into our state, about 56 cents of that goes to education already. So we obviously put a top priority on that. We will be working on that. And broadband expansion is another really interesting thing. There's a different task force that is working on that. And they have a few different ideas. I have not seen any pieces of legislation. But I do know that like Representative Height, Representative Losi, and Representative Swanson are on that task force working there. But yeah, again, some of you guys know or came to the Capitol when I was trying to push the rural economic development tax credit. 70% of the IDA tax credits are spent in 4 counties. Well, there's a lot more counties than that, and so I have heavy concerns with that. Last year we dropped a bill that stated 50% had to go to counties with less than 50,000 and communities less than 30, post-secondary education, a 4-lane highway, and a housing plan. That did not get out of subcommittee technically. We did do some revamping. We attached it to another bill, sent it to the Senate. I think we're going to actually maybe pull it back and do a little bit more reworking on that since we have a lot more time. I know you drove up for it, so thank you. You guys came and visited us. You were in the meeting. It was quite entertaining for a while. So that is great, but we've had a lot of people come to the table, and what that really did was just brought individuals to the table with different solutions. We don't have all the ideas. That's why we rely on you guys. We can't know everything, but I know I was really pleased with just some of the different ideas that came back from that. So I know as a caucus as a whole, that's some of the stuff we're working on, but childcare is huge. It's not just, it's everywhere across the state. But we are working on the workforce, trying to come up with different solutions and different ideas. So if you guys have any more ideas, please feel free to share. Jeff, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I guess just a couple of points. Yes, thank you, everyone. It really is a pleasure to see all the successful projects, especially here at the good things that are happening and government programs that work as intended. That doesn't happen as often as you might think. So to hear good feedback on the Empower Rural Iowa initiative, and the one thing that Holly pointed out, this is her point, just crunching the numbers on the Indian Hills. In total investment for jobs created or jobs trained, I mean, that's a tremendous return on investment, roughly $9,200 per job. So we just love seeing that kind of return on investment in these programs working as intended. I guess I'm a little bit newer to the process. I do have a great relationship with Josh Larrabee and try to stay up to date on the exciting projects happening locally. A couple of points I'm interested in the talent attraction side of things. I have been very involved in the young professional group in Fairfield and really just kind of love those conversations on obviously moving to a community and charting your life in a community, such a huge decision for a family to make. And something in Fairfield that we have, we just made significant investments in partnership with the local businesses on a recreation center, but also in the larger cultural context is that we have things going on. We have a lot of family-friendly entertainment. We have monthly art walks and just continue reoccurring programs. Last night there was a back on Tuesday there was a cultural alliance that had an awards show, and so it just that's one of the things that I hear from our young families in Fairfield is that there really is things to do on any given night. But it's funny. On an unrelated, totally different topic, but one I want you to be familiar with because this is something that I'd probably, one of the top issues I've heard overall is right now there's been some scandal or controversy over the enforcement of CBD and how there is a little bit of a gray area in the law. Now these are public safety drug enforcement issues, but it does, affect, again, younger people. We're talking about ages anywhere from 18 to 35 and what they're looking for in a community. And I have stay-at-home mothers trying to make a little side hustle selling this stuff, and if they can add an extra $500 or $1,000 to their income, that goes a long way towards their overall family plan. And so when I hear stories of law enforcement, shaking down retailers, that does kind of send a chilling effect. Anyway, so just because that's what people are telling me they're concerned about, I just wanted to share that with you because I think there is a lot of room for improvement. We look at communities that are developing, certainly what we see in Colorado or in Michigan. Or anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there just because it's something I've been hearing and I thought it was relevant. Yeah, like I said, creating those kind of attractions. I thank you, Mr. Pedersen, for your presentation on the outdoor recreation. And when we talk about another thing that I've gotten from Holly is really selling the assets that we do have in rural Iowa that a lot of people really are wanting for. I mean, with the outdoor recreation, the quality of life, the seclusion, the rural lifestyle, and if we get rural broadband where it needs to be, there are a lot of folks in my community that are doing the micro businesses of whitelisting something on Amazon or being able to build something out of their garage that can revenue 10, 20, 30, 50 grand a year relatively quickly. So yeah, I think the future is very bright. Obviously, this unemployment's been difficult for everyone. As fun as that is to point out. But yeah, just keep up the great work and appreciate your vision for Iowa and the commitment you have to your communities. And thank you again.
Thank you. The revenue conference says we grew by 10% or 2%, so that means we're doing a good job. Just came out in numbers.
There we go. Well, one of the things that I'm interested in, and a lot of my questions, I'm not going to brag about what all I'm doing, but I want to know something about the water quality bill, and I'm wondering if you're working on that. I know it's in the Senate and that there's some work being done on that 3/8 cent. Huh? Yes. They're thinking of changing the formula and that type of thing. So I guess I would welcome any input that somebody can give me on that. And I have a meeting tomorrow with the workforce development on the felons. And so if you can give me any help in knowledge about that, I'm on that commission or committee with workforce development about how to make it easier to get these guys and women into jobs, because we don't need to be paying our tax dollars to keep them if we can get them employed and they make good employees for you, that's what we're trying to accomplish with that task force. So I have that meeting tomorrow, and I'm doing everything I can to help you guys, but I'm totally excited about all of the things that's going on in Southeast Iowa, and so glad that I came, even though I look bad today, so thank you.
Thanks for being with us.
Are there any more comments? Sure, go ahead, Dan.
I got something real quick, just an idea, and I haven't even talked to any of the other economic developers about it, but, you know, we talk about community and quality of life, and, you know, a lot of these small towns struggle with, you know, doing any kind of projects and making their communities better. I sit on the Community Foundation board for Monroe County, Iowa Community Foundation, and as you know, the gambling profits, 2% of those get sent down to these local foundations that do not have a gambling establishment. And that, we give out, you know, around $100,000 a year to different projects in our community, wherever it may be. You know, we take applications, and any kind of project that makes the community better is what we kind of look at. But it just occurred to me that maybe it's time to look at doubling that to 4%. You know, if you give out an extra $100,000 to 85 different counties, you know, every year, I think that could really make a difference in you know, what these communities could do. And I don't know that it's really probably hurting the. I'm guessing there's a pretty big discrepancy between counties that have a gambling establishment and ones that don't. I'm sure they're got more than $100,000 a year to give out to those communities, and maybe it wouldn't hurt them too bad to share the love a little bit. It wouldn't be that much of an increase, but.
Yeah, there's a booklet that they print every year that you can see exactly how much every county gets.
And to that point.
It's a very fancy booklet too.
Yes. Yes.
And to that point, a couple of years ago, when they had the anniversary and they got an extra appropriation, we got $10,000 to do our housing study. And normally they wouldn't have had that amount of money to give us to do the housing study. And now the housing study is literally leading to hundreds of homes being built in our county.
I can tell you that's always a heavy topic. You know, with us passing sports betting this year, the percentages and where they went, that was a heavy discussion. I was not on that committee, but the 6- and 7-hour subcommittees had a lot involved in them. And I know that was some of the things that they did work out. In the end, they did raise what they originally had projected and things. So, and we agree. I mean, I think it's stuff we were working on too, and we understand in the rural areas. So.
I know we give out. I mean, Albia is, you know, the largest town in our county, but we also give out to LaVille and Melrose, the other incorporated counties too, and it helps them out. They've been able to build community buildings and community centers in their communities. So it'd just be an easy way that wouldn't cost anybody tax money and would really, I think, help a lot of rural communities.
Help circulate some more charitable.
They're losing money. They're not making what they used to make, so. That's what they keep saying. I'm not buying it.
Holly?
There's a financial statement somewhere that should probably
Has there
support
been
that.
any thought with childcare of allowing and changing some of the regulations and policies for school districts to be able to bond for early childhood facilities and to allow the people who are really in charge of education in our community, which is our schools, to take over the 0 to 5 education as well as the 4 to 18? You know, you talked about senior centers, but the other place that is really available to have meals, to have benefits, to have all the types of things, education professionals right there in staff, is our schools. And there's some mechanics that make it a little difficult for our schools to get into the early childhood arena.
Well, and some of it happens, so back when the voluntary statewide preschool happened in 2012, a lot of it we were pushing for, this was prior to me, but I've done enough studying on this because I have some concerns about it, but you know, they were pushing for community partners because then the wraparound situation would happen. Some of the schools then obviously knew that there was the 0.5, 0.6 funding that could come. Schools started taking it. Well, now they don't have that available because they don't have spacing for that, where a lot of the facilities do. So I think we need to be very careful with that situation because the original thing was more to have those community-wide partners or YMCAs or that type of stuff having the preschools in them because they also have childcare. And so you could have a 20-person or a 20-child preschool in the morning, and the other 20 children are in the daycare facility. And guess what? And then all you do is switch. Because then you don't have parents who are trying to, what is our 2 o'clock at our school pickup? I mean, I'm not really sure how, I mean, it's a little difficult at 2 o'clock pickup.
But the challenge is that the 0, 1, 2, let's say, to be able to make that profitable, to make that financially run, is basically
It's a
impossible.
1%, it's a 1% profit margin, and that's a concern.
And
that's
it's
why-
different in different communities. In some communities, it's not even a 1%.
Well, and some of the reasons, so we have, the task force, there's 3 of us. We have looked at everything from, and every area has a difference. Some areas have affordability, some people have access issues.
Right.
And so we really are trying to look and dive through all the different areas. There are some very interesting regulations. Let me just state that I'm not sure why 48 credit hours of continuing ed every 2 years for
That's okay.
someone to be this,
It
something.
takes 13 steps to put on a Band-Aid, so.
It's crazy, but you can't even repeat the same classes for 5 years, so I'm like 240 different hours of credits to what, okay, that's a lot. And so when we're already at a workforce shortage, not only are you having to pay that individual to go and take these continuing ed classes, you're actually paying someone more than likely overtime to cover for them. That's a very hard and difficult situation to find. And so we literally have looked at every angle. We're trying, we're still open for more, and and that's something I can bring up. I went and met with the superintendent of Des Moines Public Schools, who has some of the same situations with that. We also have a major crunch in, think about it, with snow days. When a teacher can hold 20 students on, say, on average 20, 25, but a daycare can only have 2 extra people after hours that are school age. So if you have a snow day, what do you do? So we've looked at those angles. We have met with multiple people at DHS in child care. I said I drove to Iowa Falls. I met with a program out in Council Bluffs that they're doing.
Atoma's got the Pickwick Center that might be a good one for you to look into. That's been successful. They're already looking at enlarging that, expanding that after a 1.5-year operation, so.
The other issue we're hearing with so many of our workforce coming from outside of Iowa, and coming from metro places like Chicago, Minneapolis, and those kinds of things, parents have different expectations. And so their expectations are that 0 to 5 is all very curriculum-based, high-level development, not just a more babysitting kind of atmosphere. And so they are really looking for things like what Vermeer provides at the OI, or an academy that has STEM-based curriculum from 0 to 5. And I think that's part of the challenge, is that, if it becomes that the education component of daycare is becoming more and more important, then we have to look at daycare slightly differently.
And that is stuff we've actually looked at as topics as well, and we need to make sure that we understand, because there are so many different needs. There's a lot of different views. I mean, when you look at children's mental health, there's a lot of statistics that say pushing these children too young is creating so many issues, and while as parents think everything's the same, as when we were in school, it's not. And pushing children too young and too early is actually creating serious issues. In the preschool bill that I have talked about, and I'm praying that this passes, all I want to do is expand it from exactly 365 days for the 4-year-old voluntary preschool to an 18-month window, allowing summer children, their parents and or teachers, to say, my kid's not ready. Everything with the child has a window, and we have to stop cookie cuttering this approach and let kids be kids. I know now, statistically, on average, you're only allowed 26 minutes of recess a day.
Now, see, in Ottumwa, our child care task force has learned that a lot of the need is based on our culturally diverse populations. 2,500 people work at JBS. Over 50% of them don't even speak the English language, so you're talking about a completely different demographic. They would prefer to see daycare in somebody's home rather than in a center, because that's where children are nurtured, and that's the structure that they're used to within their own culture. So
we've talked about that.
It's
very different. Our people do not want to go in homes because they're from big metros and they do not trust in-home daycare.
So there's no
easy
way of addressing that.
And that's why it is hard. You have to look at both. And you can't say even completely, because there's individuals in Ottumwa that do want the center, and there's individuals that do want the home. I actually have had every kind of, I've had a center, a home, and a nanny. I mean, I've experienced it all personally. I've used it all, because it depends on what part of my life I was in and where we needed to be. So I think we need to look at that. I think some of the other areas that we have been, we have to find a way to be more affordable. The turnover is concerning, the wait to be licensed is concerning. That kind of through research is how I found the nursing home situation, I think is amazing because you share a kitchen facility. A CNA and an individual that does daycare actually has a lot of the same background, so they can cover breaks for each other. The maintenance is the same, and the mental health side is actually way...
The intergenerational.
It is. They
You just have to make sure you have little potties
Well,
on the other side of the room,
having,
you
like,
know?
having some of the elderly watch the children play, or having a job to fold the laundry.
Yeah.
And it's a very interesting thing where you don't, it's not like a free range, I don't
But
say
I
like that,
think
but.
the biggest thing is we need to let the policies stay out of the way of the communities. So if a community does want to have their school take that on, we should have the ability to let the community choose that. And right now, we do not.
Yes, and so we've looked at multiple different options. We have to say, if anybody saw there, some of my posts that weren't, I'm not coming out and saying anything that we exactly are doing because obviously, if I could see my lovely little, these are all the different options we're working on right now and seeing which one's really good, amazing. But we've looked at, the federal has an amazing, grant program that's helping. That's what Vermeer is using. We've looked at some of the programs we already have that we still have dollars left on. Are we using the KIBI grant correctly? Are we using, there's several different ones I can name off. But what do we currently have that maybe isn't getting used correctly or has extra money? What could be used better? What could be, there's just a lot of different things. So we really are spending a lot of time in just looking into this and what can be changed that can make it best for everyone, because there is such a big blanket. But
We're running a little over. I don't want to put a wet blanket on the conversation. Just want everybody to feel free to mingle amongst yourselves, but I think that I should officially close this. And a thank you for your attendance. We appreciate you being here so late in the season. Thanks for your input.